Acevedo Aesthetics Corp. This is Made in House. It's the show where we chat through various topics on design, culture, and the business of creativity. Now say hello and welcome Carrie and Angel.
Hey everybody. Hi babe. How are you?
Hey everyone. Welcome to Made in House. I am very stressed at the moment.
Okay, I need you to do that intro again, but with your radio voice.
All right, welcome to Made in House.
It's like you become somebody else.
This is who I am.
Picture you with some crazy hair.
You know, I just realized that I am not dressed for there's no fit check today.
There's no fit check.
There's no fit check because
other than you're wearing a vintage thrifted shirt.
I am, but I'm not even wearing shoes. So
yeah, let's
not cut to the wide angle that much, okay, Della? Because I don't want people to see my feet.
Okay, so what are we doing today?
All right, so today's episode is extremely special, super special. I think it's one for the history books of Made in House. And we're super excited because we are going to have a guest in today's episode.
Yes.
And so this is the last time you'll see me for the episode. And yeah, it's I think it's gonna be awesome. This is someone that we love a whole lot, like how you say, someone that's really special. That's part of our family, and we're part of their family now. We're honorary Argentinians now, so really happy about that. Literally. Do you want to introduce this person, and we'll swap?
Yes, we're going to swap. So Angel's on baby duty today.
That's right.
Avon is growing. He's growing. He's crawling. He's not crawling, gosh. Almost crawling.
Yeah, he's almost crawling.
He's sitting. He's talking. Yeah. And so Miss Gracie isn't here today.
She's not here today. Our
and
nanny.
So Angel's on baby duty for the day.
Right.
But today we're actually going to have our very good friend Yesi, a.k.a. Simply Lively. I think people know her more by Simply Lively.
Right.
Than her actual name.
That's true.
But she's going to be on the show with us today, and we're kind of going to go through her story and unpack a little bit of the things that she's learned. And then we're going to have a chat too on her career. She's a photographer here in Miami, and so we're going to kind of just chat through what that looks like, how she's done it, and hopefully through her story and through the things that she's done here in Miami in her career, you'll get something out of it. I think that you will. We've definitely learned a whole lot from just being in proximity to her. And so I think you'll benefit from the conversation.
Right.
So
love it.
She's currently playing with our kid. I really wish you could
we need another camera. Do we need another camera? Yeah. Our setup, by the way, complete upgrade.
Yes, by the way.
Yeah, it is on. She's back there. It is on.
So shout out to Mr. Avocado.
Thank you. Worked really hard.
Yeah, he's been working on upgrading our setup here. So as you can see, it looks a little bit different. It's a little bit moodier. We got, backdrops and things, different mics, headphones. So
spent a lot of money.
We did.
That Gotti approved. So, all right. Well, let's transition. We've never done this before, so maybe we just do like a snap transition and Yesi automatically appears.
Okay.
So
Della, make that happen.
3, 2, 1.
I'm here. I've appeared.
I really hope that.
I hope that works. If not, it's gonna be the most awkward transition.
That's really funny. Yesi, welcome to the show, Simply Lively. What is it? Is it true that people know you more as Simply Lively than Yesi?
I think they used to. I feel like now I'm slowly transitioning.
You're rebranding
out since I've separated like work and personal Instagram. So I hope so, because eventually I would love to get rid of Simply Lively.
I don't know. To what? Do you know?
Well, I've reached out to @Yesi a few times on Instagram, and she won't read my messages because I want to buy the just @Yesi.
Oh.
But I've heard if you trademark your name, technically their Instagram's allowed to take it away from her. So
Angel's in the process of doing that
for what?
God as a designer. And
but don't you have
a bit of trouble with it? Yeah.
Don't you have a God as a designer?
Yeah, we have godasadesigner.co, but he's trying to take down just other things that are in
like
competition
everything.
Or that are misleading.
Yeah.
And
It's a commitment. You have to really commit and
Yeah.
go through the process.
but I think having the trademark definitely does help.
yeah.
Okay, so you're on the show today. Thanks for being here. On the show. We call it a show.
Is
Because a
it? Do you call it a
podcast
show?
is lame. It's not lame. I don't know. Yeah, we call it show, podcast, whatever.
I love it.
To be honest, the reason I called Yesi over is because she's leaving us forever.
I
And
wasn't
she
like
hates
the
that.
first choice. I was just like, hey, I only have this day. They actually wanted probably my sister here first.
For like a free consultation. But this is your last Friday.
It's my last Friday.
Living in Miami, a resident of Miami-Dade County, which you've been for how many years now?
Oh my gosh, I was going to do the math. Like 28 years.
There you go.
28,
So first time moving
28
out of
years.
Miami
in
since
28
you've been
years.
here. How do you feel?
I feel like you tricked me into this to get to really my feelings.
So yeah, Yesi is like, you're transitioning a lot. I'm sure you're feeling a
Yes.
lot of things. I'm not trying to put you on the spot,
No,
but
you can put me on the spot.
But yeah, it's your last Friday. I mean, I'm sure you'll be back, right? That's the plan.
I'm going to be back monthly, so that's why I'm not making such a big deal about it. But how do I feel about my last Friday? I don't know, because I'm not letting myself like
go there.
There it goes. I'm now that I'm blocking emotions or feelings, I'm just trying to be very smart and selective with what I let into my mind.
Good.
Right? Because it is such a big transition. And I feel like I need to be in a good mental state come like August 1st when I officially like transition to Virginia. So I just have to be so aware, because I feel like my whole life I've been very negative mindset in terms of like, we can get, talk about this, but like work wise. So I have come now to an understanding of how important it is what you let into your mind, right?
Yeah.
It can either make or break. It can make you successful or not successful.
Right.
So I feel like when I get to Virginia, I need to be in the best like state of mind. And if that requires me putting in the work now to not let myself, get into like a negative mindset of like, I don't want to do this and all that stuff, because it's not true, but you can easily fall into that. So I'm just trying my best to be smart with the way that I'm thinking. I am very sad, but I don't think it'll hit me until I'm in a position where like everyone's hanging out down here and I'm up in Virginia.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my gosh, I wish I was there,
Yeah.
So I think that's when it's going to hit me. So I have to prepare for that.
I think that's really clever of you. And I think as we have our conversation, people will understand more sort of how you've got into that place,
Right.
And just to give a little bit of context for those of you that don't know, Yesi, she is about to get married in a few weeks. So she is moving from Miami to Virginia to start her new life.
Right.
But we're going to get into that a little bit more. But just wanted to give context
Right.
that is the current transition that you're in. And the reason we called you to the show was I got to fly her out next time.
It's going to be a lot more expensive to get me here.
Okay, so
Yes.
we talked about Miami, right? It's been your home for 28 years.
Yes.
So let's backtrack a little bit, because I kind of want people to know your story a little bit more. And like I said in the beginning in the intro, I think in just kind of talking about our story, we learn things along the way. And I know you're somebody who, if you haven't done this most of your life, definitely in the last few years, you're very intentional about the way that you approach your life. So you were born, let's start from the beginning, Argentina. What's like an Argentinian thing?
Like a slogan or like
a
che?
Oh,
And say che
so- okay. In what context? Like, how do you?
in any context, or like, I don't know how to describe it. Like,
Acevedo.
che, ¿qué pasó?
There you go.
But
Okay.
that's like a half, like I'm more Miamian
Okay.
than Argentinian, because working here in Miami, you meet so many different people. So I feel like I picked up like maybe a Cuban, maybe like Dominican, Puerto Rican. So I feel like when I speak Spanish, if I'm not saying the sh sound, I just sound like anyone else from Miami. And I feel like I have so many people that get mad at me when I say like usted, because Argentinians don't use usted. They use vos.
Oh.
But from working like in the restaurant business and like trying to like prior to everything when I was younger, trying to be respectful to like
Yeah.
elders, I would, I got used to the usted.
Yeah.
But we do not use usted.
That's funny. We don't use any of those proper ones. We
Yeah.
say just do.
Do. Usted?
I mean, if you're being proper.
Right,
but
if you're being proper,
most
but not like, but like, vos, ¿cómo estás vos?
Exacto.
And I'm used to like, oh, usted cómo está? Like,
okay.
but yes.
So you came.
I came to Miami with my family, my parents, and my sister when I was 7, almost 8, and I've been in Miami ever since.
That's really funny because I moved here from Puerto Rico to Miami around the same age. I was 7, and so did Angel. Angel was 8.
I feel like if we were born in the same year, we'd have similar stories or like
We're not
timelines, but we're not. Neither is Angel.
You're like 2 years older than me.
I'm like 7 years older than you.
Friend, I'm 33. You're 35.
Oh yeah. No, with Jenny. I'm
Yeah.
like 10 years older. That is true.
Yeah.
2 years wiser than you.
Okay, so how was that like? So do you remember that transition? And I guess looking back now, what is there anything that you maybe felt that way that you're thinking about now as you're moving or like being conscious of?
Oh my gosh. I feel like I haven't unpacked my childhood.
Oh my God.
You can ask my sister and you can ask Mike. You guys were there when Mike first met. I don't know if you remember, but Mike clearly remembers when he first met Nati, which is my sister. He's like, oh, so what's one good thing that happened? You know, you can tell me about Yesi and childhood. And she just like shut it down, like the most negative thing. And he was like, oh my gosh, like I asked the wrong question. So Nati and I have not unpacked in therapy our childhood. Although, to be fair to my mom, she's an amazing mom and my parents are amazing. But it was a huge, transition to leave like my whole family and everything, my language, culture, to move into Miami, at least, thank God it was Miami and not like Wisconsin or something like that. So it wasn't too bad eventually. But at first it was like America. And so now it's not, Miami is not what it used to be, Like McDonald's when we moved here would close at like 7 p.m. Like I still remember. It was like the crazy, yes, when we first moved here. It was just a different lifestyle.
What year was that? So if
1995.
Okay, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So it was very different. So I remember, and I don't talk about this a lot because, again, I think we bypass this part of my life. But I remember coming to the U.S. and being excited, right? But at the same time, I remember my parents telling me, hey, you can't tell them that we're going to be living here. You
can tell who?
The government, like
Okay.
not the government, the
School?
no, the airport.
Oh.
What's it called? Border control.
Customs.
Customs.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's like, you can't tell them that we're going to be living here. Like, you have to tell them that you're coming for vacation.
Okay.
So I was like at 7 trying to process, like, we're not coming on vacation. Like, we just sold everything. And like, we're literally moving to the US,
Yeah.
So I just remember being like, okay, but like going with that, because that's what my parents told me I needed to do, So that started a whole journey of us, like my parents and all of us being like in Miami, like illegally. And that's why like, it's something I don't talk about a lot because I had to keep it hidden for a very long time, So that's what I'm saying. I haven't like processed, but being here, I remember my mom, according to my mom, I would would be made fun of in school for not knowing like English. But again, now it's so different. Like 1995, Miami was completely different. Or like kids would give me the wrong homework and I would do the wrong homework because I had asked for help.
Jeez.
And I would come home crying. I don't remember any of this.
Wow. It's funny because like my mom would tell me stuff
Yeah.
too. And I'm like, I don't remember that. It's like, I don't know if it's because you're a kid and you just don't remember certain things or you just learn how to block certain things. I have no idea. But I'm like, please keep going.
I know.
Who am I?
I know. When she tells me, and she's like, she was heartbroken. She's like, what did I do to my daughter? Like now she comes home crying every day. Like, did I make the right choice by moving my whole family to this whole new country?
Yeah.
And now looking back, every time we go to Argentina or every time like we're in a good place, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so grateful.
Yes.
Because I would not have the same opportunities that I would in Argentina, you know? It would be... It's not like you made a right or wrong choice, essentially, because I think God would have been faithful if we were in Argentina or if we were here. But I feel like it's just a joy to be in this country, and it truly is. And the opportunities and what I get to do as a career, it would be a whole different way over there.
Yeah, and I was thinking about that the other day because like in America right now, there's so much complaining about politics and what's
All the
right and what's
things,
wrong
yeah.
and whatever. What was it? I saw something the other day. Oh, it was a holiday. It was like Memorial Day or something like that. And people have opinions, and so they post their
Right.
opinions.
Social media.
Yeah. And I was thinking, I was like, man, like this country obviously is not perfect,
Right.
And we live in that, we experience those things. But I think those of us that come from other places, we realize the opportunity and the advantage of living here and all the good that it has. And I think that good outweighs the bad, even
Right.
though the conversations being had right now are serious, whatever. But, when I go back to Puerto Rico, I'm like, the light company can't even keep the lights on, or like
No air conditioning.
yeah, like the maintenance of certain things, just the lifestyle. And I think all of that affects the mindset of the country, and that affects opportunities and stuff like that. So yeah, every time that I go back, I'm the same way. I'm like, man, thank God that my parents made that decision. And can you just imagine, because our parents were younger than us,
Yes.
right? Yeah, because my
mom
mom
was
I think my mom was
29 or 28 when she brought her whole
I
family
was
here.
7. Yeah, I think my mom's like in her early 30s.
I can't even move to Virginia. On a great lifestyle, amazing husband, like
From one great
opportunity.
lifestyle to another.
Right.
That's really funny.
I don't know how. Like I have no idea how my mom did it.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think when you're in a country like Argentina and Puerto Rico, like there's nothing else you can do, right? Like you see no hope in whatever choice you make in staying in that country. So it's like, I'm just gonna try over there because there's nothing else you can do here. That's you get so desperate.
Yeah.
And they had to be in that desperate moment to
Yeah.
make that such a
Yeah.
huge decision. So.
Yeah. Okay, so you were 7 or 8, you said, right?
Yeah, we came in August and I turned 8 in October. So.
Okay. And so you're in school, and you get made fun of. I'm sure you went to ESOL and things like that.
Yes. BINGO, 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 and bingo. What's his name?
Is that what you learned in ESOL?
Yes, you sang English songs.
I don't even remember.
To
I just
learn.
I remember being taken out of my class to go into another smaller room with less kids that were all Hispanic,
That
and the
looked like
lady was
you.
Hispanic. And like doing work, I don't know.
No, we were singing songs. I remember BINGO was one of the big ones that I was like,
Wow,
I know English.
that's funny. Yeah.
But yeah, ESOL was huge.
Okay, so you grow up, you go to high school, whatever. You have funny stories of like how you started working. I think at like 15 or
At
something.
14, so I was just going to say, like, coming into this country, right? Having the right perspective of this country makes you love the country based on like what you lived through, what your parents told you. But also coming into this country as an immigrant, you have the immigrant mindset of like work, right? So when we got here, my dad luckily had a job set up, but my mom would just do anything and everything, like bless. Like she would pass out yellow pages.
Wow.
And I remember her like in como un cochecito.
Okay.
Like
a
a stroller, like no, a baby stroller. She literally bought a baby stroller,
Stop
like
it.
the ones that fold, and she would take it out her car and she would put like stack like 10 yellow pages, and she would just walk and like drop off the yellow pages. She passed out flyers in the street. You know how people are passing out flyers, and she needed like a certain amount of flyers passed out in order to like meet her thing so she could get paid. So now every time I see someone passing out flyers, I'm like, I'm gonna get that thing.
Yesi.
Because it makes a difference.
Hold on, I can get emotional.
It's a lot. It's a lot. My dad, at one point, we had to do like pass out newspapers, and we would wake up. And I say we because during summer he asked me for help, and he was gonna pay me because as a teenager you're like, I want money. And now looking back, I'm like, wow, so selfish, Yeah. And I remember we would have to wake up at like 4 a.m, pitch black, hot, go to this warehouse and just grab the amount of newspapers, like tie them up, put them in the car, and then pass them out into like when the sun rises. And I used to like drop off newspapers at my high school. And I remember it was such like a humbling experience of like, I don't want to be seen, but also like, this is what I have to do. And my dad has to do this. And like, this is crazy. So I started working at 14. And it was just like, hey, if you want stuff, like if you want to go out on the weekends, it wasn't really weekends because we worked in the weekends. If you want to buy your nice things at Dolphin Mall when you go with your friends, like we can't afford it. So you're going to have to do it. And my sister and I wanted that stuff. So according to my mom, we decided we wanted jobs. So illegally we got our first job.
Which was dressing up, right?
Do we have to say this? If someone out there has a photo of me.
I wish we could like display the photos because they're really funny.
I've shown you?
Yeah. You and your sister, like the Little Mermaid or something.
Yeah. So out there somewhere in West Kendall, someone has a picture of me dressed as a Little Mermaid in their photo album of their like 7th birthday party. And that was like the most uncomfortable. I'm like, why am I wearing a bikini? And like my body's not made for Little Mermaid. Like I don't know why my boss made me dress like this. But yeah, we dressed up as like party entertainers, which sounds
okay.
like...
Yeah, those.
At 14, we were
characters for birthday parties. So like
cosplay.
If your daughter's into the Little Mermaid,
yes, we would come to your birthday parties, and then we got a promotion right away.
To what? What do you get promoted? So you dress up?
Party host.
Oh.
You go from being dressed up to then you're hosting the parties, and you got, I think it was $25 an hour.
Wow, that's not bad.
But it was only on weekends, and it was like maybe you did maximum 2 to 3 parties a weekend. But then you're like there the whole day because of the traveling. It was just, and you're sitting like on the floor of a van, like sketch.
Wow. So this definitely developed your work ethic, I think. And your sister, because you guys
we
are
both.
different, but you're very like strict about your work ethic.
Yes. Okay. We've been working. I'm ready to retire. I mean, when I think about starting at 14, I think it's time. Hey, Mike. I'm telling Mike he's my sugar daddy for the next month because I'm not working. He's like, really? I'm like, well,
that's funny.
Support me, please.
Okay, you go to school.
Yeah.
Where do you go to school?
What,
like
high school?
University? No, I'm skipping over your
Yeah, I know. I was going to say there's so much
14,
to unpack
14,
there.
You're dressing up and you're going to
14
parties.
dressing up.
And then you graduate high school and you go to college. Where do you go?
I went to Miami-Dade.
Okay.
Shout out.
Let's go.
Anyone else?
That's in
Miami-Dade
Kendall,
Community
right?
College. I actually went to the downtown campus.
Oh.
I used to take the bus to the train to the Metro Mover every day.
Okay, so your immigration story is a lot more immigration than mine.
Yes.
I have never taken the bus. I never
Nice.
worked odd jobs. My dad just got, he's been in the federal government. So when you're telling me this, I like,
that's what I'm telling you.
Like,
we haven't unpacked
migrate,
it.
But we all have different experiences of what that looks like. Okay, so you go to Miami-Dade, you take the bus. I don't think, maybe that's why I got a little lazy in it. Because like taking the bus to go to school.
From hammocks, so if you're familiar, it was in hammocks. I would take it like by the light, and then I would take the bus to Dayland Station. From Dayland Station, I would take the train to the Metro Mover, and then from the Metro Mover to downtown. The reason I did that was because I got a full ride to Miami-Dade, and be part of the honors college. So I'm not paying for college, so you better believe that I'm getting there one way or another. And then the Kendall one was already full, so I only had the downtown.
Okay,
but I love downtown. So
and you got a degree there in teaching.
I got my AA, and then I got a full ride to FIU because of that. And that's where I did.
So you didn't pay for school at all.
I don't have any school debt.
That's really good.
I know. Tear. Cries in college.
But you get a degree in teaching. How do you come up with that decision?
I don't know, to be honest. Looking back now, I want to say that I had a great imagination when I was little. I played a lot. I played teacher, I played banker, I played grocery store, I played everything. So I feel like naturally I was a creative person. So coming from Argentina to here, a photographer was not something that you did. It was something that you think, happens in Hollywood. It was so far-fetched, right? And it wasn't even part of my life, so I didn't even think about it. So it's like, okay, I'm not going to be a doctor. It's like all the basic, like here are your 5 things that you can do. And then teacher sounded like it was fun because I could be very creative with my lessons, you know? So
Okay.
when I was doing my internship, I remember I was teaching, was it 5th grade, how to do fractions. And mind you, like, I didn't know how to do fractions. So the night before I had to teach it. So I had to like YouTube and like teach myself, which I'm sure a lot of teachers are like that. It was so stressful. But I remember I turned it into like a pizza place and I dressed up like a chef and I brought real pizza and like all this crazy stuff. I'm like, and that brought me so much joy, like getting that creative into it. So I feel like I had it and I thought that I could, you know, display it in this way by teaching.
Got it. Okay.
Because that was the most creative job. You know, there's like colors.
I
And
would never think of teaching as a
Really?
creative job. Never. No. I would think of it like I have to show up and I have to keep
But there's
kids
so
in
many
order.
colors and so many ways to like set up your classroom
Literally.
and like activities. So funny.
Yeah, we have different mentalities. Okay, so you're a teacher or you're becoming a teacher because it's fun and
Yes,
creative.
it's. I thought it was as creative as it could be compared to all the other jobs.
crazy. Would never think that, but
Yeah.
cool. But I get it.
Yes.
Okay, so you get a job out of school. Do you go into teaching right away?
A few years off, and then I go into the WOW Center. So I never taught in like a public school system.
Was that your decision, or you just couldn't find something?
Long story. That will take very long. So,
Okay.
but it's a whole. Telling you
Okay,
so
you get
much.
Okay. Okay, fine.
Okay.
So we go into the wall center.
Go into the WOW Center and I start teaching directly there, which now looking back, I'm glad I didn't go into the public school system because I feel like it would have been harder for me to get out of it, you know,
Okay.
because it's harder to get in. It's a whole other process. So I went directly into working at a nonprofit for adults with special needs, being their art teacher. And it was an amazing job.
And you were there how long?
I think 2 or 3 years.
Okay. So
Yeah.
this is around the time that I start meeting you.
Yes.
So this is where like our stories kind of they start intertwining. So
Yes.
at that time I was in art school, so I had gone to FIU, done psych, and then I'm at MIU doing art. And Angel's Church at the time was Christ Fellowship, which is also the church I started going to. It was the church you and your ex-husband were going to, and your
Yes.
family. And then I think somebody posted that they were hiring at CF in the art department. And I think Angel sent it to me or something, and Angel might have reached out. I don't remember. I have really terrible
Me too.
memory.
That's why when you're asking these questions, I have to like
Yeah.
dig deep.
It's bad. I end up getting the job, and I'm at CF. And your ex-husband, which he's just part of the story, so
Yes.
I'm gonna bring him up.
totally open to
He
talking.
was the creative director back then, so
Right.
he was my boss.
Right.
And so we became friends. And I remember we even were in small group together
We did a small group.
about marriage. Like it was us and Sada and Scott.
And someone else, a few other people.
Yeah, I don't remember.
Yeah.
So we did that, right?
Yes.
I keep going with my life. Angel and I, we get married. You guys were at our wedding. I end up leaving CF to start our studio. And then you guys know then from our studio, I go to VU. So as I'm going through my thing, she's going through her
Right.
own thing. Eventually, we end up kind of deciding that we want to freelance and start our own businesses around the same time. So you're at that point transitioning from being an art teacher at the WOW Center to becoming a photographer. So
Right.
how do you go about that? And I think the main takeaway for this story is how did you know that was the next step? What were you feeling, and how did you do it and get it right?
Oh my goodness. I want to say it was one of the hardest decisions looking back, because I loved working at the WOW Center. And it was like, I was using my degree, I was teaching, like I was doing whatever I wanted because it wasn't public school system. Like I literally could create the curriculum that I wanted. So I had like so much control and freedom, and the work environment was amazing. My sister was my boss. Like, could it get any better than this? And when you work at the WOW Center, like you technically never leave. Like there's what's called like work retention or person retention or whatever. Like it's people have been there for like years because it's such an amazing organization. But at the same time, I was digging more and more into photography. So I would clock out at like 3 p.m. and I would head to Miami Beach. I would shoot, something, and then I would come home, do it all again. And on the weekends, spend my time, shooting. So essentially I had 2 jobs at the same time. And it just became like too much. And I remember receiving emails. And I think it was like with big brands, like, hey, can you shoot this? It's on a Wednesday at 12 p.m. And I'm like, at the Wow Center, I'm like, oh, so I started getting like that pool of like, there's interest. People are having interest in my photography, but I'm tied down to this, And I remember taking some days off. I had a shoot, I think with Sunglass Hut, and they're like, oh, can you go to Orlando on a Wednesday? And I had to take like a day off from work, drive. I stayed one night and then drove early in the morning and went straight into the Wow Center. Wow. So you can only do that for so long. At first it's exciting, and then it becomes like too much. Yeah. So after a while, I was like, okay, I'm getting a lot of opportunities and I can't do it. Should I do it? Is this the right decision? Should I go for it? Should I not? And then back then, I just had a conversation with my ex-husband, and I was like, hey, can we do this? Can I do this? And of course, he was very supportive, and he was like, yeah, I think you can. And had the right conversations, and I let go of the job. And I remember it felt like a very selfish decision, because I was here like working with the individuals, helping them, like transforming their lives, showing them love that they don't receive love. And here I am going on my own journey, like super selfish. Yeah. But I had to process that. And I was like, man, if the individuals could understand and process like my decision, they would want the best for me. They would want me to pursue that. So that was one of the perspectives that I had. And so I let go of the job, and at the same time, someone randomly like emailed me that they were an art teacher moving to Miami from like, I don't know where, and they were interested. So I literally transitioned, and someone else came in and took. So like God filled the gaps.
That always happens, right?
It's the weirdest
thing.
The
randomest, craziest stuff that's like
so random.
If like you're in the right
heading in the right direction, God fills the gaps.
And it's like it's seamless.
It's crazy. Like it was 2 weeks before, and I was like, sure, come look. And then when he came to like volunteer, I was like, do you want a job? I'm leaving. Do you want this? And he took it, and I was like, great. Like, oh, man, this is amazing. Awesome. And then the first week of my freelance career journey, I got flown to Cuba with Sunglass Hut.
I remember that.
And I was like, all right, if this isn't a sign of like, this is where I'm supposed to be, then I don't know what is. Yeah. But mind you, the week after, I was at home with 0 jobs, and I was on the floor crying. So Cuba to like living room crying that I make the right decision. Because the freelance is so like, for photography, it's so inconsistent, it's like up and down.
Yeah.
Like there's weeks that you have shoots every day, and then there's weeks that you don't, and you're like, oh my God, what am I doing?
And guys, she went to Cuba when Cuba was just opening up. And it was like the thing, And it was like, oh my God, you're going to Cuba. It was really cool. Okay, I want to backtrack a little bit. So how did you even get clients? Did you start off just doing stuff for fun and getting a portfolio together? Or did you start like actually doing client work? And like, how did you even get that going?
Yeah. I want to say, so Simply Lively was a lot of things. It started, and Mike makes fun of me because it started as a vintage store, like an online vintage store, where I would go to Goodwill, find things, and sell them. I didn't sell anything because I decided to keep everything. And that's where he like cracks up. He's like, that is the funniest thing. And it's so true. Like I couldn't part ways with any of the items that I chose. So that didn't go well, right? That's funny. Like, okay, transition into, and then I became like a fashion blogger, which is like, it lasted very short. But that's where I made connections and friendships with other like Miami fashion bloggers, not influencers.
Okay, how did you do that? Because social media wasn't the way it is now fully. So how?
Oh my gosh. Like, how did I become a fashion blogger?
Yeah, like, how did you even make connect? Were you posting somewhere?
I was posting. I had a blog. I was posting my terrible outfits. And I think on social media too, like random, I was doing DIY recipes, like just anything. I think I always wanted to like be creative in some way. And people just picked up with it. And like, there's a blogger who was like, head of all the other bloggers, like the queen, and she would like organize events, and I got invited to one, and then you're forced to make friends there, and it just goes from there, and I made connections, and then transition from style blogger to like I actually rather just take photos. And then I had a friend, Jana, which you know, and she was like, hey, do you want to take like my outfit photos? I was like, that sounds cool. And we did one in South Beach. She dressed like super 70s. And it was like my first like editorial like fashion. And I was obsessed. I'm like, this is the best. Because prior to that, I was doing like kids, babies, birthday parties, like family sessions.
Okay.
And like I had, you know, I enjoyed all of that. But this was so different.
Yeah. Okay, so you put yourself out there, step one, which
Yes.
I'm sure was scary.
Yes.
Step two, you connected with
Connections,
people.
yeah.
And then you made sure that you put yourself in the spaces and
In the right
kind of forced
spaces.
yourself to do that. And then step three is people gave you opportunities, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Once you made that connection, like then you post the work, and I feel like, and I'm not trying to sound like conceited at all, but somehow photography came natural to me. So I feel like what I started posting, not knowing much about composition and lighting, but I still had something already in me that like I could take a good picture.
Yeah.
You know, and people could see that compared to like someone that was also just starting but didn't have the natural ability.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yes. Okay. So you go for it. You go to Cuba.
I go for it.
You're on the high. And the following week, you're on crying because what the heck did you do?
What did I do? How am I going to get through this and all of that? And back then at that point or shortly after, I want to say that my ex-husband also wanted to pursue his thing. So all of a sudden we're both freelancing,
Yeah.
and that was scary as well. But God provided
Yeah.
back then, you know, like took a leap of faith, both of us. at that
Okay.
point.
And so we become close friends because you guys are doing that. We're doing the
two
same
creative
thing.
couples.
Yeah. By that point, we had already had a few studio offices and we were looking to upgrade.
You guys had, we were working from our apartment.
Right. And so I don't remember the details of how it happened, but I assume we had a conversation. We were like,
I guess.
hey, we want to go into this warehouse because
Right.
we needed to get a bigger space. But we couldn't afford it on our own.
Right.
And even if we could, it was super scary. And we did not just want to
Do you remember how much we paid monthly? Looking back now,
$1,800, friend, which
for a 1,200 square foot warehouse in Little River.
it was actually, it's one of the coolest things that I think we've done,
Yeah.
you know? And I know
It's fun for a season. Yeah.
we look back on it, we're like, why didn't we do this or whatever?
Right.
But we did with it the most that I think we knew what to do with it then. So, Angel and I, we're looking for a bigger warehouse. And I think we're like, do you guys want to do
Right,
it with
join
us?
forces.
Right. And so we split it. And so it becomes the Acevedo Never Sleep warehouse, right? Our studio space.
Such a cool time.
And like we bring in our desks, our computers. Yesi brings all of her stuff, like
Kind
her
of full,
papers.
yeah.
And we did that for 2 years.
I think so, right?
Yeah. And you would have shoots at the
Yeah.
studio.
That's where I learned lighting, like from God, like literally, like I just needed a space to like a space that gave me the opportunity to set up lighting and play with it without having to like invest money into it. And like looking back now, how much I use light, I wouldn't be where I am now if I didn't have that studio in that season.
Yeah. And I remember you hosted a dinner too
I hosted a dinner for creatives.
for photographers. Okay. So in that season, what did you learn the most from it? Like what were the highs and the lows? Like how was it? Because I know you're trying to be a consistent photographer and get consistent work. You're trying to pay the rent of this warehouse, you know. How did that work out for you? How was that?
Honestly, I don't remember. I remember having like convos of like at the beginning, like, are we going to be able to afford this? It was a stretch,
Yeah.
you know, but it was a healthy stretch knowing that there's going to be work involved, but it's going to be worth it, you know? So I think that was the first thing. And then I remember just practicing. Like I was like, if I'm going to have this space and I'm going to invest like this monthly payment, like I need to use it.
Yeah.
Right? Because you can have the space and if work's not coming to you and you're just sitting around, it's a wasted time, you know? So I remember I would have every Friday. I don't know if you remember.
Yeah.
It was like my creative time. And I grew so much as a professional, as a creative professional. in those moments because I learned so much because I didn't have, I was just there to create and to
Yeah.
play.
And okay, so yeah, you're reminding me of a lot of stuff. Like one thing that you said, and I think this is important, it's like sometimes we got to put ourselves on the verge of something so we feel the pressure
Right.
of like doing it and going forward, because having that rent payment, which by the way, we never missed rent. We
Never.
paid,
And it was high. It wasn't as high as it is now, but it was
because it was rent and we had to pay for
water,
the internet. Yeah, it was like
electricity,
another house.
Wi-Fi.
But praise God,
We got through it.
always. And yeah, I remember you would have these creative shoots. So it's like putting yourself on the verge where you feel enough pressure to keep growing because that season essentially was like, I got to pay rent. So I got to get good. I got to
Right.
get better. I got to
Right.
put work out there where whether it's coming to me or not.
Or not, right?
And so that's where a lot of your creative shoots happened. But I think that also led you to creating more community as well, because you would invite models and so jointly you guys would build each other's portfolios. So the model would have pictures for her folio. You would have pictures for your thing.
Right.
And like you were saying, you were learn lighting and stuff like that. And I think sometimes we're scared to put ourselves in a spot where it's like, oh, am I going to make it? Because we're scared of failure. But I don't think we failed in that season. I think it was a stepping stone
So good.
for who we are now and where we are now.
Yes.
And yeah, we look back on it and we're like, why didn't we get more furniture? Why didn't we?
It was so ugly looking back, but we had the best time. And I feel like it was a season where like we grew, like our relationship grew a whole lot because we would see each other like every day, So it was like hanging out with
gosh.
your friends all the time.
It's coming back. We would
Right.
mess with Yesi so much because Yesi's like really funny and outgoing, whatever. So like we had a camera. I remember this one time we had a camera in the studio and she would go in and out when we weren't there because of her photo shoots or whatever. So one day she's coming in and we see her and we just start talking through the camera.
No, you were making sounds,
Yes.
like weird animal sounds.
And she's like looking at the camera like, what is that? It was really funny.
No, I
We
remember
laughed a lot.
texting you guys and be like, guys, there's like an animal in here. Little did I know that it was you guys like
It
making
was
fun of
funny.
me.
Yeah, we had a good time. Okay, so we're doing that.
Yeah.
And then we start transitioning again. It's funny because
Right.
at
You
least you and I-
transition a lot.
Yeah, at least you and I.
Yeah.
So I at that point we're both going to VU Church.
Yes.
And I start getting involved in the design team, making stuff.
Yes.
And then I get offered a job. I take it part-time and I am doing studio and part-time VU. So I'm beginning a transition into my next thing.
Right.
You're in your own transition.
Yes.
Which is not a fun one.
Right.
And I don't think you welcomed it. But you're going through more or less a divorce.
Right.
And so you guys end up separating.
Yes.
Which leads you to who you are now.
Yes.
And the person that you've become now, right?
Yes.
I think in the thing that I would like to just talk about from that is, how did you get through that, And I remember, I think we got really close and it was in that season because it was like, we were doing life with these guys, you
Right.
know? It's like, we're seeing them together. We're having
Right.
dreams together. We saw how you guys worked together and
Right.
the stuff that you would create. And then
Overnight. It felt like overnight.
and it really broke Angel and I. And so we
Yeah.
were going through our thing and then you were going through your thing and it was
Yeah.
like, oh my God. But it was beautiful outcome because I think
Right.
you actually found out who you are because you were forced to, I
Right.
think.
Right. What was the question?
How did you get through?
How did I get through it?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
And the reason I'm asking is because
Yeah.
I think that season probably taught you the most out of all the seasons in your life. And I think the way that you make decisions now and the way that you go about
Yeah.
stuff is very much a result of that
Yeah.
season in your life.
Yeah. It's so funny. There's like when important things like that happen, it's like before and after kind of thing, So I don't remember a lot before, but I remember a lot after. How I got through it. I think one, if anyone is going through something similar or something that's just like disrupts their life, essentially, right? One of the things that I did that helped me in those dark like nights at the beginning was just getting through minute by minute, which I don't know if it was the counselor, I don't know where I read it, but you're in such a like horrible mindset and emotion that you feel like you're not going to get through the next minute, right? So I would have to train myself to celebrate when a minute would pass.
Wow.
And it's like, okay, I got through the minute, right? And then it turned into, okay, I got through the next 5 minutes. And that's like the life that I lived for a few weeks, like at the beginning, you know? Because it's just like, like you find yourself alone. Like you've had this partner together for 10 years. So it's a long time. We were married that long, but together as a whole. So now I find myself in our apartment by myself. Like, how the heck am I going to get through this, you know? So that was one of the things. So I want to encourage anyone, if you're going through it, like celebrate the small steps, you know, start with getting through just the minutes, then start getting through just the hours. And then eventually you'll be like, oh my gosh, it's a month. Like I made it. I didn't think I was going to get through that first minute. Wow. Here I am a month. And now I'm, I think 5 years. It was end of 2018. So 2019, 2020.
Yeah, almost 5 years.
Almost, yeah, 4 or 5 years. So that's one of the things. 2, I started counseling, which we were already going to counseling prior to everything like exploding, essentially. So I was already learning a lot about myself and what a healthy marriage looked like. And then when everything exploded, it was more of like myself, which is so crazy how like the counselor transitioned into like, this is about you guys fighting for it. And all of a sudden it's like, it's what's best for you, you know? So I had to like retrain myself to figure out what is best for me, you know, and what makes me happy, what's healthy for me. Because I was so like, prior to that, I was so like, what can I do for him? You know, like what's going to make him happy? What's going to get him out of depression? And I was just so focused on him. And then I transitioned into like more about me. And that was very healthy. It took me down a journey of doing, you know, therapy consistently, like for a full year, where I would go at first once a week. And I made friends with my best friends with my literally when we were almost done at the deep process, she was like, okay, I don't think I have to see you like once a week. I was like, what do you mean? What do I do? Like you're my Wednesday at 12 p.m., you know? So started counseling. I think that's important. So basically all of a sudden you find yourself with 24 hours a day by yourself, you know?
Yeah.
10 of those you sleep pre-kids, right? What the heck do I do with the other time? I'm a freelance photographer, right? So my schedule's all over the place. It's not like I go 9 to 5, check in, check out, I have community. It's like, no, I'm literally by myself, right? So I had to fill in the gaps with things to do. So I started running. I would run 3 miles every day, sometimes in the morning, in the afternoon, if I didn't have anything else to do. Because what am I going to do? Sit on the couch and cry? I'm not going to do that. Like, I'm going to use that time. I had community. So everyone, all of a sudden, like everyone showed up and stepped up, which was super beautiful to see. Like I remember you calling me and I remember just crying on the phone with you, but people were filling in those gaps. I became the third date, like not the third wheel for everyone, for, you know, all my friends, and everyone just took me in and just started like, you know, involving me. So I would literally do a checklist from 9 to 10, I'm going to do this. From 10 to 11, I'm going to do this. So in a healthy way, I created these habits that would keep my mind busy and have moments where, yes, I would cry, I would be emotional for those minutes, and then we move on to the next thing, because this is what's scheduled.
You would schedule? Like
I wouldn't schedule emotional moments. I would let those emotions come and feel it out. I'm by myself. I'm going to feel this out. But then at 3 p.m., I'm going to my sister's house.
Okay.
And
so you would try to stick to the schedule that you had.
Yes. I remember I would do like little squares and like, here's what I did. And at the end of the night, I would write in my journals, like, here's how I filled my time.
Wow.
But I had to be super intentional with everything that I did in those moments. Because the moment you isolate yourself, that's when like the darkness kind of like can overwhelm you a little bit.
Right.
So.
Okay, so you're filling in your time, and you got to figure out life on your own. So part of that is not only like your emotional day to day, but now you have to figure out, where am I going to live? What kind of place do I want to live in? How do I maintain my income, etc.? Because it went from a 2-income living
business together, like doing well,
to just you. So how do you go about, and I can imagine the challenge because it's Miami. And I think at that time, Miami was starting to peak, you know, and living in the city was starting to become like the thing at that point. But you end up kind of living your best life at, how old were you?
30. How old am I now? 31.
You're 35, I think. Okay, 31.
31.
You're
Almost
basically
32.
living what people would categorize what you do in your 20s.
Right.
So how do you do that? Because I know you were living at your parents, you had a storage, and then you decide to.
Yeah. It's beautiful to see how God kind of works in all the details. I think that the transition was as smooth as it could have been in the worst case scenario, you know. So by February, you know, we had to leave our apartment back then. So I had lived in it from like August to February. Like that was a whole season in of itself. And then I find myself in February, okay, what do I do? And as a 30-plus-year-old woman, after living, you know, alone outside of your parents for 6 years, going back into your parents, it's hard. Like it's embarrassing. It's not what you want to do. You're going like a step backwards, you know? So I didn't want to stay in that moment too long because I was like, I'm independent. I've always been independent. So I need to find a place. So my mom and I started looking and end up in the city, which was already risky for my whole family because we were all lived like 2 minutes away from each other, you know? So, which is so funny because now I'm moving to Virginia, which is even further. My sister gave me such a hard time about moving from downtown Dayland
Oh my God.
to the city. So you guys can only imagine.
So you were prepping her.
God was
Dang,
prepping her.
yeah.
Dang. Look at God. But I just remember I was like, I need to continue. Like I can't slow down. I can't go backwards. Yes, there was moments that I was like, I'm going to end up working at a Starbucks. Like I'm going to have to get a full-time job. But God, basically, like God always provided. And there's so many moments that I had to look back and remind myself, like God has gotten me this far. He won't leave me here. Like I know that I'm called to photography, right? So I'm going to make it. I'm going to make it through. So it's just taking one step at a time. Luckily, if this was happening now and the rent, I'd be at my parents. I'd be at my parents chilling.
Because how much is that your apartment? That was a 1-1?
It was a studio. It was
Oh,
300,
it's a
400 square feet apartment. And it was less than what my Dayland one was. So I felt like, okay, I can do this, you know, and I had a monthly retainer that would cover that. I was like, okay, so I just have to fill everything else, like whatever extra stuff. So it was just a risk, but my gosh, like I loved my like city life and I thrived and I did so well, like on my own, doing whatever I wanted. I got like my pink couch and that was like a monumental thing of like starting this new chapter and getting to like do what makes me happy and all that stuff. My pink couch, I miss it.
Yeah.
So
I remember that. And I think that's when you started discovering who you were as a person.
Right.
Because that apartment became a reflection of you. That's
so
where
good.
like the pink and the
Yeah.
color and the pastels and like the girly stuff.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, looking back, I think you were really intentional too about the environment that you were in. Because you wanted a certain light. And I think you're still that way. You didn't just go into anything. You went into something that you knew was going to make you happy and healthy
Yes.
for the season that you were in.
yes.
And I'm sure that took a while to find, you know, and to let go because you
Yes.
eventually,
Yes.
in the season that you're in now, you had to let that go.
Yes. It was such a special place because I think it was more than just a roof over my head. Like you were saying, like it was a like rebirth for me essentially because I'm learning how to be on my own, right? I'm learning what I like, what I don't like. I'm learning how to be single. I'm learning, you know, how to be part of a whole new community that I'm like, involving myself in. And I feel like God has like favor over my life and the apartment was one of those things because I did want something very specific. And God brought it into my life and I will forever, like, it was my holy place, you know? And it's so funny. I had such a hard time leaving the apartment that my ex and I like shared because it became a holy place for me. Because when I was by myself in those dark moments, it was like my church, essentially. So I had to let go of that, believing that God would have something better for me without knowing, because I didn't have the apartment by then, you know. And then I come into this place and it's better than my last place, and I'm in this whole new season, and now this becomes my holy place, my safe space as well. And now here I am, like, having to let go in hopes that God will bring me something better.
Your next better one.
My next better.
Okay, so that's all your personal stuff.
Yes.
Now you're figuring out also your work. I think part of your decision making, correct me if I'm wrong, to be in the city was also for your work. If you needed to go to the beach, or just the opportunities are just more based in that space. Did you systemize that to some degree, like making sure that you on your own can make rent? So you have a retainer, and we can talk in a little bit about how you even get retainers, but you have your retainer. Did you like do a balance sheet? I need this much money, and would you reach out to people? Like, how did you fill in everything else?
I've been very blessed with a lot of work coming to me because I put a lot of work out, because I hold relationships really well. I communicate well. And I think that helped me. So it's almost like a domino effect, right? Because then people recommend you, or even just social media. Like, I've always been myself on social media, I feel like, for the most part. Obviously not showing everything, but for the most part, people feel like they relate to me, or they feel like they're connected to me in that way. And that has been like really helpful for work. In terms of like financially, I ended up hiring a bookkeeper.
So you take on another
cost.
Okay.
And, well, backtrack. That was like halfway through. Before that, honestly, it was just like pay the bills. Like, figure out, I knew how much I needed a month, and things would come. And then did I do a lot of like pitching back then? No. I feel like it was just like word of mouth and things like that. So I got very comfortable in that.
That's good. So your consistency prior to.
Right.
And doing work, putting it out, helped you in that season, because you weren't necessarily starting from start from scratch, or like pitching, or like wondering. No, I already had like a good amount of people that were coming to me for work. That's good. Which I think, again, God works all that out. Yeah.
Like that.
So did you ever have trouble putting work out, or you knew it was just like, I have to? You know how like there's an insecurity about putting your workout, especially because you're a creative. It's kind of, you're putting yourself out there, like you're exposing yourself kind of, because since I've known you, and we've had conversations about social media and like the toxicity. There we go. That's immigrants of it, but you've always been, I think this season is probably your less consistent season, even though you have your consistencies within it, but you've always been like posting work. Did you ever have trouble doing that?
Yes.
So you did have like insecurities.
Yes. So I still have insecurities, and I've always had insecurities, because you tend to compare yourself to others, right? And what I'm passionate about and what brings me life in terms of creating is not the same thing that pays the bills. So
Wow, that's rough.
Have so much work that I've done, and that I've done well, that I don't post.
Oh God.
Because it's not the type of client that I want to attract.
Okay.
Right?
Dude, another whole thing we can go down to.
So my Dropbox 2019 through 2023, the amount of work, like, I'm set, like, if I don't need to work for the rest of my life, and I have content to post. Like, wow. I've hustled. I've worked a whole lot. But it's not necessarily work that I want to put out that I'm extremely proud of. It's work that has helped my clients in what they needed to be, and I'm there to like serve them, and I can do good work, but it's not necessarily work that I want to put out that represents me. Okay. So it's always been that struggle of like, but I need to pay the bills, so should I post this? But also like, that's not the type of client I want to attract, so do I hide it?
Yeah.
That's my inner battle.
Okay, but I think you've actually been really wise, because one, you went for it. You put yourself out there. You've been consistent. You've committed to the things. You've been putting stuff out since almost the very beginning.
Yeah.
You've made good relationships, and you've established good relationships over time. And like, been faithful in those, because I know a lot of people that still hire you and stuff are people that you've been with for a while. And you've been selective about what you put out because you're clear through your journey. I think you have a good sense of awareness of what brings you joy. And so you're selective in even that, what you're putting out. And I think those are really great practices over time that I don't think you've necessarily been taught, because we don't do coaching. So nobody's like, do this and this and this and this, you know? I think it's part of who you are, but I just want to highlight that those things, you know, people see Simply Lively and she's doing all these things or whatever. And I know that you inspire a lot of people, especially now in the season that you're in. But it's come with practices that are consistent and that you've done since, when did you start? I think 2015, 2014?
Freelancing?
Yeah.
I'm on my 9th year.
Which is when?
2016, I think.
Okay. So for 9 years, you have been consistent.
No, earlier. I'm not sure, but.
Okay. And we can do another hour just talking about how you've done it for 9 years.
Yeah.
You've gotten here and you still probably don't even feel like you scratched the surface, or you know.
Yeah. There's so much more left. And, you know, we're hard on ourselves. So I'm like, am I where I should be already on starting my 9th year, you know? But then again, life throws things at you. So I had to, you know, navigate through divorce, and that like slowed down certain things and made me adjust things. And I had to pay for bills. So like less of the stuff that brings me passion, you know, and more of like, hey, I need to pay the bills. So this is what I have to do. So it was all like navigating the season, you know, that I was in to figure out how to like still be doing what I want to do. Because there's so many people that are great at photography, but can't do freelance work. You know, there's you try and then they give up because it's like you have to be consistent. You can't stop things. You know, there's going to be days that are like really hard. There's going to be clients you hate, and you have to push through all of that. And some people are just not meant to be freelance photographers or like freelance anything because you just rather, you know, I'd rather clock in, clock out. You know, I'd rather be a photographer for an agency and I just go Monday through Friday from this time to this time, and then I'm good. I don't have to talk to any clients, you know? So freelancing is not for everyone. Like, you really have to be so intentional, consistent, build relationships, be professional, handle the business side of things as well, on top of creating work that you're passionate about. So it's a lot and it's exhausting, you know, but I love it. And I feel like I can do it, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
I still do it.
Okay, so in that season, we're hanging out one day, and Miss Girly here tells me, random, I was not expecting this. We're like smelling candles.
No, it wasn't random. Someone read my energy.
Oh,
I was planning on telling you.
I got to work on my memory, dude. Like, by the time I'm like 70, I'm not going to remember my life. Yes, we're hanging out. We go to this thing, and
we're smelling
candles.
We're smelling candles at a flea market.
And this guy, it starts, reading or whatever.
my aura or like my energy. Yeah. And reads me literally from the inside out as I'm like nervous to tell Gotti about what I'm going to tell her. And this man just like says all these things. And what was it that he said? He said, open up your heart, let him in. You've been through enough. This is the season for you to like open up your heart again. And you were like just looking at me.
I was like, what is he talking about?
What is he talking about? And I was like, oh my gosh,
literally.
He knows.
And dude, I have this thing of like how God uses anyone.
Yes.
You know, and I always think about Pharaoh in the Old Testament with Moses, because I'm like, sometimes as Christians, right, we're like, well, that person is evil or sinful and they don't play a part.
Right.
But they all play a part.
Right.
And like, I never expected to go hang out with Yesi and smell candles and this guy. And I'm not saying that he's holy or anything. I'm just saying that he played a part to some degree. And I don't necessarily believe in people reading your energy and stuff. But he said that stuff. And
it was real.
I was like, what the heck? We were laughing and this whole thing. So we end up buying the candles.
I had to buy the candles.
And we walk away. And in that walk away, she tells me about a guy named Mike. What's his full name?
Michael John Cisalfo.
Es que yo no puedo con eso.
I know.
Sí, ¿cómo es?
Zizolfo.
It's really hard. Zizolfo. Okay, Zizolfo. Like, we don't have those letter pairings
Yeah,
in the...
Italian last name.
Well,
Zizolfo.
you meet Mike.
I meet Mike.
And that's a whole, what we call God story.
Yes. That is a whole story in its own.
I guess the takeaway that I would love for you to share is, how do you navigate that? So you go through, you're married, you're with someone for 10 years, you get a divorce, you are, 3 years?
3 years.
Single, figuring it out, you figure it out. You're on the up and coming, because at that time you were healthy, you were happy, you were doing your thing. And Mike comes along the way, and then you start, that starts a new phase of your life of decision makings. He does not live in Miami. So he just came for a visitation.
A quick weekend trip.
Yes. And then you start the decision making of, do I get involved with this person? So I just want to hear who you are. Well, how old were you? 31, 33?
When I met him, 33. I was turning 33.
Okay, so you're 33. You've literally gone through a life. And how is it different? How are you going into it? What's your mindset? How are you making decisions?
Into like fresh in the relationship?
Yeah. So like you're
transition
meeting and you go through the normal stuff of meeting somebody. But at some point, like, the guy doesn't live in Miami.
Right.
So like, what does that look like? How do you make those decisions with the wisdom that you've gained over time? Our house just shut down because it's Google and I don't know.
I don't know what just happened. We're Googling how, literally what you asked. Google wants to respond for me. So how do I transition? I don't have anything that I had like a plan to meet Mike or like out of state and this whole, like, that's not, I think, the plan that I had. I think my plan was to be hopefully in a healthy, good relationship or being single. I was in such a good mindset of like, if I'm single for the rest of my life, I'd rather be single than be in the wrong relationship again. So that's the mindset that I had, which helped me throughout, like, not going into a relationship too early, right? Because I needed to heal and all that stuff. So I didn't jump into anything. I took my time knowing that I'm confident and secure in who I am as a single person. If someone comes and he's the right person, we'll see, you know? But in terms of like the transition, it was like, hey, I know that God was stretching me into starting to date, right? Because it had been already 2.5 years. The counselor said it would take me, research shows, 2 years to heal from divorce. So I took those 2 years very seriously. Yeah, there's like statistics. And I like took it like I'm a rule follower. So if you tell me something, she said 2 years, I'm like, sweet. So I took those 2 years and I think it was super healthy.
Doing the work,
Doing the work, yes. And not like dating, not going clubbing, not getting drunk, you know, going to like drugs or stuff like that. Yeah. So it was just like 2 healthy years. It was 2.5 years and God was like stretching me. I could sense it, like, hey, it's time to date. And I didn't want to because I was so comfortable, and this was something that's gonna stretch me and make me uncomfortable. So Mike came in and I was like, all right, this guy's out of town. I'm literally just trying out dating. This guy's from out of town. I'm not going to date him. This is just testing. You know?
It was also like Mike was reaching out to a few of us because he's from out of state.
Yes.
And he wanted to get to know us.
With
and
creative
I think
people.
We found each other through the pandemic because we're part of VU Church, and he was going through his own journey.
Right.
And he joined a crew, which is like a little small group that we have. And that's how he kind of gets involved with even knowing who we are. So I remember he had hit me up and Angel that same weekend because he was going to be in town. He wanted to connect, and I was not.
You guys were out of town.
I was at my mom's,
Yeah.
So you took the opportunity knowing that that's the season that you were in.
Yeah, and I was like, well, you know what? He seems like a good guy. He's, you know, a dad.
There's a few other details,
There's a few other details, but I knew a lot about him, you know, prior to him.
She did think he was cute.
Yeah. The thing is, he was like, you know what? This would be a great test trial. at least hang out with the opposite sex. I hadn't hung out alone with the opposite sex in 3 years. So I just took it as that, like practice. And then after we met for the first time, I was like, oh, this is easy. I was like, this is great. I'm like, I was thriving. I was like, I can date. Like, I can do this. And it was actually just because Mike and I got along like really well. I'm sure there's disaster dates out there, you know?
Yeah.
So it just went from like, you know, oh, wow, this guy's really great. How are we going to make this work? I had zero clue. Like when we had our first like official FaceTime date where we asked, you know, each other like serious questions, like to see if he was the right like match for me. I didn't think that much ahead, essentially. You know, I was just like, God will figure it out. Like if this is the guy for me, like when we get there, we'll get there and we'll figure it out. You know, I couldn't think that far ahead.
Yeah.
You know, so.
Okay. So you guys are in different states. He's in Virginia. He's here. And pretty early on, you both are making the decision that we need to figure out if this is actually going to work, because neither of you wanted to get into anything if it wasn't going to work. And just for context, Mike has a similar story in the sense that he was married for a while and got a divorce. And I think, did you guys get divorced around the same time?
Yeah, probably like a year, maybe less than a year difference.
Okay. So he was on his healing journey and upcoming, and like you
Coming
both
out of
were,
it,
on the up and coming of that.
Yeah.
And so you both had enough wisdom and maturity to understand that this was big, high stakes, and you needed to go into it as best as you could. So what did that look like? Did you have a system for it? Did you keep doing counseling? How do you establish, like, how do you get to that point of like, he's the one and I'm going to put in the work to do the long distance relationship?
I knew right away, because I wouldn't have gone into more than like that. After we hung out that first date, I wouldn't have given him the chance if I didn't see a potential in him, and if I didn't like, oh, we got along and he's a good guy. So I did continue counseling and processing through that, what that would look like. We both agreed at that point that we would try without necessarily knowing, you know, like if I'd moved there or if he moved here. So much goes into it, so many conversations. I think we had to be intentional with each other, considering we are long distance, so we don't have date nights and all of that. So we had to create that. We didn't have like, here's a guide on how to do a long distance relationship. So we did the best that we could in terms of being very intentional. There was conversations of like, hey, I feel distant from you at certain points. Like when he had the boys with him, obviously he was a lot more busy and I'm here by myself. So there was like even keywords that we came up with to make sure that we didn't get too isolated from the other person and create this resentment, because his intentions weren't to make me feel distant. It was just there's distance and then there's busyness, you know? So I think came up with like a keyword. Like if I were to text him this word, he would already know what that meant. Okay. And so he needed to like reach out and be intentional. And also with me having the right heart, knowing that he's not doing it on purpose, you know? And stuff like that. So that's like a system that we created, visiting each other like once a month. Praise the Lord, we got to do it at least once a month. And I hope that answered it.
Yeah. So there's the cool thing, and I was telling Yesi this when I was writing her life story, what I know of her life story, and like potential questions. You notice the ups and downs, you know, in our lives. And the key is knowing how to manage both, because each has its pros and cons, you know, like the valley is isolating, but so is the mountaintop, as appealing as it looks, you know. That's good. And I think one of the like the patterns of your life is that you've been pretty consistent in being like in tune with who you are and what you're seeking, and going at it with the most wisdom you have, I think, at that moment, you know, and then giving it your all. And I think the reason why the relationship has worked and you guys have been able to make it, and yes, he shares a lot about their journey of being together, because it's been a lot. He comes with his baggage, she comes with her stuff. He has children, he lives here, she lives there, jobs, etc. All these different things that they've had to navigate. Like, I can't imagine literally like not having day nights, but you guys have done it and you figured it out in a really healthy way. And I think that is a result of just your consistency in other areas that have yielded that. And the reason I highlight that is, again, because I think it's so important. Like sometimes we get so caught up or like knocked by things that happen to us, or like you could have given up on that relationship, or you could have, like you said, grown in resentment and things like that. But it takes a certain amount of mindset and work every season, every high and low, of how to navigate that stuff. And I just want to encourage people that life is going to be wavy. It's going to be up and down, up and down. And every season gives you the handles for the next season. And you're able to overcome the things that you're facing. You just kind of have to like face it on and do the thing. And you've kind of done that through every season of your life up to now. And like now you're facing even another mountain, because this is how the conversation started. You're moving to Virginia and you have a new house that you've barely lived in.
Barely, yeah.
That you're trying to furnish.
Days, yeah.
Your every day is going to change. You're going to be living with somebody again. You haven't lived with somebody in 5 years, you know? So let's end the conversation with...
Yes.
And I think you kind of started this way, but how do you plan on doing it? So we've talked about your life. I think you mentioned in the beginning you were being selective about your feelings.
Yes.
Anything else that you're going into it with, and expectations, I guess?
Yeah.
What the next year would look like?
Yeah, I know for certain that I'm supposed to be in Virginia in this season. God has like confirmed it multiple times. I've been very intentional ever since I met Mike. My first year of being with Mike, I was praying that Mike would find a job in Miami and that he would move to Miami. And that was like my goal. And I was like, God will make a miracle. And you know how I am. Like when I say something, like for the most part, it happens if I like really like believe it. And this was not happening. So after a year, and I was like, all right, so maybe my prayers need to change and shift. And slowly that's where my heart started shifting of maybe Mike here is not what God wants. Maybe God wants me in Virginia. And that started a whole process, you know, of talking with people about it, of, you know, praying and God confirming. It was during conference 2022 that like God really confirmed it for me. And so now it's like, okay, so I know I'm supposed to be there. So the only thing that I'm going with is knowing that I'm supposed to be there for that season. I know that, you know, it's a season for me to serve Mike. It's a season for me to be with him and be with his kids as well. And it's a season for Mike and I to grow in our relationship and for his kids to see that as well. And I think that's one of my main goals, is going there to show them like what is a healthy marriage look like, you know, and I hope if my goal is that they can take anything away from like the way we communicate, the way that we are, like that would be like enough of reason for me to be there, you know.
That's incredible. I hadn't even thought about that. That's like,
that's my goal.
You both you both have a heart to redeem what each of you have kind of gone through, you know, especially with him that he has children, and those things are legacies and generational things that get passed on. And God always redeems things, you know. We always talked about that, so that's actually really cool.
I tell people, I'm like, it's deeper and greater than I know. Like I know, because from what I can see, it's like I don't have a job there, I have to start fresh, but I know that God wants me there, so it has to be greater. It has to be an impact that I can't fully understand and comprehend. And that's the only thing that I can like grab onto, that I see, that I'm like, maybe it's that, you know, and that's the season that I need to like humble myself in and embrace, you know, and then we'll see what the next season and work, God will figure it out. Like, honestly, like he helped me here. He like 8 years doing freelance here. Like, what's going to be, you know, the challenge over there? Like, we'll figure, maybe it's not photography. Who knows? You know, like I'm trying to like have that perspective of embracing the way that God's going to surprise me, rather than having this negative mindset of starting over. Yeah. You know, so being open to whatever he has for me, that I know that I'm supposed to receive over there. Dude, because he wants me there.
That is so cool. it's like an undoing, right? Because like
Yes.
I'm gonna get a little faith-based here, but we believe in there's a dying to yourself, and I
Right.
know that's a drastic way of looking at it, but it's actually really beautiful because there's an undoing to you. So you're not afraid of starting over because you've already started
Right.
over. You're not
That's good.
afraid of even launching anything or creating a foundation because you've already had to do that.
Right.
So like your next stepping stone is something completely different that you haven't even faced yet, you know? And it's like, I think the reason why you're walking into strength into this next season is because you really were steady and consistent in your previous season. So I took the freaking hour and a half or however long this podcast is going to be because I wanted our audience to get to know you a little bit better. You know, like Angel and I, we love you for many reasons. And I think they're gonna get to see some of that, but also seeing somebody's life. And those were just, that's 30 something years in an hour. So that's not even the full thing, but it gave you enough, you know, for somebody who's young, you're just starting out or whatever season that you're in, that we all go through these things at different phases. And there's always a beginning and an end to a season. Like nothing lasts forever. You know what I mean? And so even me as your friend, I'm in a transition phase along with you because now it's like, oh, she's going over here and now she's like a stepmom. So like, do we get to talk about mom stuff now?
I mean, not my children. My stepkids and your child have a very wide age range.
That's true.
But when Avon is a teenager, I'll have some experience
She'll have
to
wisdom
share
for
with
me.
you.
Okay,
which that's kind of crazy.
That's actually really good, right? Like reverse. All right, thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
I do think I'm gonna sneak it, but I think we're also gonna have a conversation around your actual work and how you do it.
Yes.
And how you send proposals and things. So guys, stay tuned for that conversation. I think that'll be a part 2 and it'll release in 2 weeks from now. So
Have her plug her website and all her
yeah, we didn't do any plugging today. Okay, tell us what you're doing, Yesi.
What, my Instagram and website?
Whatever you want to share.
Okay, you can find my personal life over at Simply Lively, which I share a lot of personal, and I've had fun with it because I was, very strict with what I posted and when I posted and the colors, and now I just have like a sense of freedom to share. And I feel like every time I share, someone always reaches out and like says something about it, and it keeps me going. So I hope that I continue sharing. But my professional one, it's at Yesi dots like 5 underscores. But if you go to Simply Lively until I find the girl who has at Yesi, this is what I have to deal with. But that has my professional stuff.
Yeah.
And my website is yesi.fun because I'm a fun
I was
person.
going to say simplylively.com. Why was I going to say that?
Because at one point it was.
It was? Okay.
Slowly transitioning out.
Yesi.fun. Thank you, Yesi,
Thank
for
you,
being on the
guys.
show.
Love
we'll
ya.
see you guys in 2 weeks.
Thank you for joining Made in House. On your way out, if you would be so kind to follow, subscribe and or like our episode in the relevant social media platforms. Feel free to share this episode with your colleagues. And, as always, keep making beautiful things.